walking with us. It was signed, The Daughters of the American Crown. If Claire's life this last month had been bound up like a story, she'd have thrown the book across the room by now. Margaret was taking out a notebook and a nub of a pencil.
I must say, I thought it was rather brave to send the maid to the kitchens. It still looks a bit medieval down there. I don't think Augusta has two leeks to rub together.
Claire closed her eyes. I almost told the girl to go lawn bowling. I still don't know why I need a lady's maid when I eat all my meals off this desk.
Propriety,
Margaret said, flipping a page.
The papers would have a field day.
We have mice. I'm fairly sure I have small biting things living in my stockings. The papers aren't interested in that.
We've informed them that our court in exile is rather rustic.
That's, of course, why we have a pony living in the parlor, Claire said. You know, when Georgiana told me I looked like a horse just now, I realized she might have thought that Smokey was my sister.
The stable needs a new roof. Poor Smokey kept getting rained on.
Poor Smokey keeps pissing on the rug.
This attitude, you know, is how you scared off the last one.
The last horse?
The last maid, Claire.
All she wanted to do was paint my face, and Claire's face twisted. Ask questions about my whirlwind romance. At that, Margaret finally met her eyes. There was pity there. Well meant, but it curled Claire's stomach. No one wants to talk about Remy, she thought, least of all me. How to explain a romance that had begun by being kidnapped by her province's governor because he thought her able to grant his wishes with the touch of her hand, to make him a better leader? A romance that ended in a sham marriage, a marriage of convenience, as he lay dying on a boat in the middle of the lake. Remy hadn't died, not yet at least, but his feelings for her had. Claire didn't know what was worse, that the two of them had fallen in love somewhere along the way, or that they had just as quickly fallen out. Claire's own feelings were a stew of betrayal and longing that she had neither the time nor the inclination to sort out. Fine, Claire said to Margaret after a moment. We'll keep Georgiana, even though she told me I look like I need a feed bag. Provisions. What were you able to find today? Just an overview. The first of them will be here any moment.
Do you think it's terrible, her secretary said, that we're organizing a feast when our soldiers are toe-to-toe with the enemy at the border?
This is a biblical feast. This is a feast that's meant to save our lives. Margaret sighed. While the few hundred men who were loyal to their governor stood guard at the border, watching the Livingston Monroe guard towers and fingering the triggers of their lightning rifles, Claire had asked Margaret to take the youngest and greenest of them for a special mission. They'd been tasked to scour the countryside for staff and supplies. They put out the word that if Duchamp was to properly govern from his temporary exile, he would need their help. Word was that his gratitude, when he was restored to his rightful home, would be immense, and fulfilled in gold. The folk along St. Cloud's western border were, historically, not the most ardent supporters of their governor. At the best of times, they felt abandoned out here, so far from Monticello and its sprawling lake that brought so much of the trade to their narrow province, and now was not the best of times. Abigail Monroe, the wife of Livingston Monroe's governor and the real architect of their province's conflict with St. Cloud, had disappeared into a dungeon, and her province's fragile alliance with the general had held. The Livmonian soldiers would support the general's bid to overthrow Governor Duchamp, and even now their redcoat soldiers were swarming the border they shared with St. Cloud, waiting for a chance to invade. And the first fields they'd burn and pillage would be those here, around Warden Cliff Tower. St. Cloud's western citizens didn't like this, not one bit. "When is that whelp Duchamp going to grow up and throw some punches?" a farmer had furiously asked Margaret. When Claire arrived and took stock of their surroundings, she realized she didn't know who the citizenry hated more, the Duchamps or Livingston Monroe. That was a problem. So Margaret's hand-picked squadron of soldiers went into the countryside to make